Welcome to the Zebra Family channel. If you have not subscribed, please click the like button, share and subscribe. It's free. Bantu beMzansi South Africa. Asesibukeze nanka amadoda amabili asa-analyze ukuthi bazawuthatha yiphi position kulama elections uma ephela after the 29th. Ngilalele uFloyd, ngalalela uSteven Hazel we-DA, Floyd we-EFF. Ngathola ukuthi indlela aba-analyze ngayo ihlukile, ayifani. uFloyd uthe uma analyzer scientifically what exactly is happening on the ground and wakhombisa ukuthi how are they going to get the numbers, how, because every time you analyze you look back and you look where you are, so it gives you an idea whether you are moving forward or you're moving backwards. We understand that DA has been the second largest political party for 20 years now. So Steven Hazel is not interested in staying in the second position for the next 5 years again, which is going to be another, if they become the second largest political party, that means they're going to be on the back benches. And somebody might be in the front. It's either it's going to be ANC, it's either it's going to be either any political party. I can't mention which party is going to take over. But as far as I was listening to these two guys analyzing how they are going to get to the second position or to the first position or remaining in the second position or whatever that will happen after the outcome of the elections on the 29th, which a couple of days left before that will be happening on Wednesday. So I want to ask each and everybody to listen to both parties. Who was analyzing scientifically, who was just analyzing differently, privilege-wise or whatever. Because we have to understand, we have the majority of black people in South Africa. We've got the minority of white people. And they own the land. The white people owned a big chunk of land, while the majority owns just
subject there.
Yes.
And we're going to move closer to one of your key priorities of the manifesto of the EFF. But before we get there, you made comments recently that you're noticing that people are slowly converting towards the EFF. In other words, you're finding more and more support for the EFF as you campaign on the ground. In fact, you've gone as far as saying, post these elections, you may actually become number one or the second largest party. I want to understand whether indeed those were your comments.
Yes, of course. Look, the EFF, like let me tell you something which is a reality and which we can prove in less than 20 days, is that if the EFF doesn't get an outright majority in these elections, we're going to be the second best political party in terms of the electoral support in South Africa. So we have experienced the necessary quantitative growth, and of course accompanied by qualitative growth as an organization.
So,
and we know
wait,
this.
Mr.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry. I don't like the sound of my own voice, but I need to get clarity.
Yes.
In these elections,
yes,
if you are not the largest party, in other words, the ANC is that party right now.
yes,
If you are not in that spot of number one,
yes,
you're possibly going to occupy that which is occupied by the DA right now. You'll be the second largest political party.
That is exactly what is going to happen. And we must just look into the journey of how we got there. Remember, in our first participation in election, in 2014, we were bigger than the Democratic Alliance in two provinces of Northwest and Limpopo. And then in 2019, we then got to be bigger than the Democratic Alliance in Mpumalanga as well, then making it the three provinces. And we can tell you now, without any fear of contradiction, that the EFF will be decidedly bigger than the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng province, in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Eastern Cape, of course, in the other remaining provinces, that they might still get some numerical majority, but not a decisive majority. in the Western Cape. But in majority of provinces, we're definitely going to overtake the Democratic Alliance because we know what we have on the ground now and what we did not have in both 2019 and 2014. So now we've got proper solid structures in all the 23,000 voting districts of South Africa were properly represented. And we know that for you to secure an electoral majority, you need to be present in all corners of South Africa. And the EFF is properly and ably represented in all corners of South Africa. So one thing which you must know is that the EFF will either be number 1 or number 2 in South Africa. That is a reality which you are looking forward to.
So, I just want to remind you then, it's not the 2014 election I'm going to use, nor is it the 2019.
Yes.
Those were general elections, which is what we are going to now.
Yes.
2021, local
Yes.
elections. I don't know if you still remember how the EFF said at that time that it was and would take over some of the municipalities in South Africa. And this would not be through a coalition. This was going to be an outright win. That did not happen. So I'm wondering,
So I
sitting
think,
here,
the,
how realistic your predictions are this time around versus what we heard and saw subsequently post the 2021 election.
so you see, the other measure to gauge the EFF success in 2021, one is the fact that in 2016, when we participated in our first local government elections, we had 750 councillors across South Africa. We now have got 1,200 councillors and represented in 95% of municipalities. You cannot finish both hands counting the municipalities which were not represented in South Africa of the all the 257 municipalities in South Africa. You can count 2 in KwaZulu-Natal and 2 in the Eastern Cape and about 6 or 7 in the Western Cape. But in the rest of the municipalities, the EFF is firmly represented to demonstrate that we are solidly the only organization of the 3 national organizations which are represented in all provinces that has been showing consistent and dependable systemic growth. And that growth is not being arrested. And by the way, remember that we are still building the organization to have depth and proper representation in all the voting districts. And it's one of the issues that we must have to commend the ground forces of the economic freedom fighters on that. In less than 10 years, we have got to achieve a national status because it's only 3 political organizations in South Africa that are represented in all the provinces and are represented in even more than 80% of municipalities. So the EFF is, of course, a force to be reckoned with and will demonstrate that much more firmly on the 29th of May when a substantial majority of our people vote for the economic freedom fighters.
Yeah, we're fast running out of time. I've got so much to ask you, but I need to put this question to you because you are the second in command in the EFF and your deployment is in the Eastern Cape province.
Yes, currently, yeah.
Indeed. Is that where you are predicting this large growth that people are going to see come May 29th? Is that part and parcel of where your growth is going to come from?
No, look, we're going to have proportionally well represented growth in all the provinces. But I don't see any province of the EFF declining in terms of the number of votes that were received in 2019. If anything, I don't see any province in terms of the work that we've recorded thus far, which will grow by less than 100% as compared to 2019. I don't see any of the provinces that, because if you can just observe, you remember we organize ourselves at VD level. So if you can have an organization that has got volunteers in all the 23,000 voting districts of South Africa, then you must know that that is an organization that is serious about the electoral work and elections work.
Yeah.
Not even the current official opposition is represented in all the VDs. And we know this because when we then check the audits of the IEC in the voter registration weekends that occurred in November last year and February this year, it was only the EFF and to some extent the ANC, because in a lot of VDs, the ANC was not represented in KwaZulu-Natal. But the EFF has demonstrated that it is the only organization that is serious about electoral work and has spread its wings and clutch into all parts of South Africa. And that will be demonstrated when millions of our people come to vote for the Economic Freedom Fighters again on the 29th of May.
I can't not talk about KZN.
Yes.
It is one of the key battlegrounds, and you were initially deployed to that province.
Yes.
Before your subsequent move to the Eastern Cape. The introduction of the MK Party. Are you finding that it is making the EFF lose steam in KZN, or is the picture still the same according to the EFF? You're still finding enthusiasm around the EFF?
Look, do you know, I can tell you this without, do you know, by the time MK Party was announced publicly, the EFF had already put in place the voting district elections task forces in all the 4,971 VDs of KwaZulu-Natal, where you have got volunteers, 20 volunteers in each and every VD. And even after the formation of MK, even when we went to the rally on the 10th of February this year, there was never a shift of the constitution and the constituencies that we got to mobilize as volunteers of the EFF. So in terms of the ground forces of the EFF, there's never been a shift. We have never lost any member of the EFF to MK Party. On the contrary, the ruling party is the one which has had a lot of its regional and sub-regional leaders who flocked into the MK Party for one reason or another. But the EFF has not been affected by the formation of MK Party. And of course, it will get some support in KwaZulu-Natal and all of this. We cannot deny that fact. But it doesn't affect the consistent growth of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Remember that in 2019, we got 350,000 votes in KwaZulu-Natal. And we are sure that if we have underachieved, it would have been when we have failed to increase that by at least a minimum of 100% as compared to 2019. So we're not affected at all by MK Party, and I don't think it will displease us. And the other simple issue, by the way, which is scientifically proven, is that we appeal to a different constituency. We appeal to mostly younger voters, like all the statistical and polling illustrations have demonstrated the simple fact that a majority of young people, they say that this is our organization as a generation which is going to carry us into the future. So I don't see young people associating with organizations that are led by 80-year-olds, or organizations which are putting people who are above the age of 80 to campaign for them, telling lies and all of those other things there, as is happening now with the dying former liberation movement, the ANC, where they put octogenarians to be the ones who are campaigning for them and say, no, vote for us because we represent the future. We're going to continue with the uselessness that has defined the past 8 years. So it's one of those things that, and young people are not fools, by the way. Young people are much more alert. The youth is far much more alert that they can't be misled by these old people who have been lying to them for many years, and they want to try to stratify the failures of the ANC in the past 30 years and say, no, it was not us, it was Zuma and everything else. It's one of those things that we have to then deal with differently. So the EFF is not at all frightened by organizations which do not represent the future. By the way, all these parties and their leaders don't represent the future in terms of the ideas, in terms of vision. Even biologically, they don't represent any future, because majority of these people who are making commitments to young people now will not be there in the next 20 years.
Part of the
Ourselves will still be at the center of the agenda of economic emancipation here in South Africa and in the entire African continent.
Part of the reason I'm amused is that you're the same people who will say in Parliament, don't be ageists here. We are all equals. Now you're not afraid to use age as a factor. But
but I think, look, the reality is that the issue is that when all of us were adults now, but I think globally there's an acceptance that there's a certain age category that must at least rest from working or participating in society. That is why there's retirement ages all over the world, which is 65 years old. I've never seen a 70-year-old retirement age. But you have got 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds who are saying that they want to lead the country. And leading a country is not an easy task, by the way. It's a very complex phenomenon that requires focus and attention to details as to just what must happen in all spheres of society, and also even a proper appreciation of the changing dynamics of the global economy. I don't think that any of these people who are raising their hand to want to lead South Africa, they possess that dynamism to could lead South Africa into the future, into prosperity. So we have to conscientize all young people that these people are just trying to defend their failed legacies. Like Thabo Mbeki has been going up and down and everything else. And even if you listen to his messages, he says, no, the 30 years are broken into two.
Election and what you are likely to get as the Democratic Alliance. Let me quickly talk about what I said in the introduction while I was on the other side about Floyd Shibambu of the EFF, seated where you are last week, saying boldly that the EFF, if it doesn't make the number one spot, it is most certainly going to become the main opposition in South Africa because this is scientific, he says, and it is based on, in part, the amount of youth support that they have managed to galvanize over time in the country. Are you worried of losing the main opposition status?
No, not at all. And I think you have every election, the EFF make these outrageous claims. The last election was that they were going to win. They were going to win all the metros. I think it's part of the bravado that they pull out before the election. The real fight after the 29th of May is going to see who gets third place. Because if I look at some of the polling and some of the more up-to-date polls and certainly some of the more reliable polls, it's going to be a fiercely fought fight between the MK party and the EFF for third place. And I think that's where they should be worried about because they may end up being the fourth largest party in parliament after this election, not the third.
If I didn't know, I would say you are gaslighting the EFF.
Not at all. It's polling. It's there. MK has surged ahead in provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng. You look what happened at Orlando Stadium. I can tell you right now that that is where the fight is going to be after the 29th of May. The DA will be the official opposition if we're not able to form a coalition government at a national level. And the fight will be between the EFF and Jacob Zuma, ironically, for that third place.
Where do you place yourselves? What are your chances?
We'd obviously like to, as I've said from the beginning, be able to form the core of a new alternative government after the election. And that was why we formed the multi-party charter, was to bring 11 parties together to hopefully be able to pool our votes to win the 50% plus one at a national level. And that is still the first priority for us. We would love to form a new government with a new direction and with the policies and joint plans that the multi-party charter has been releasing over the last couple of months around the key areas where we believe South Africa needs to be doing things differently in order to get onto a new path of prosperity, opportunity, inclusive growth for more South Africans. And so that's where we see ourselves playing. And if we're not successful at national level, I certainly think there are a number of provinces that are still absolutely in play for a multi-party charter government to take over. KwaZulu-Natal is ripe for the picking. The MK have eaten into the ANC support massively there. They've opened a pathway. Gauteng is looking increasingly promising. And of course, we believe we'll retain the Western Cape. And so that's three key provinces. That's over 60% of the economy, over 60% of the population. You control those three provinces. You're a big player in the South African political system.
Is it scientific what they are talking about? And if not, what is your opinion sitting there at home or listening to what those two are trying to analyze the outcome of the elections as to what position they will take after the elections? Because most of things should be on scientific, not on privilege. When you analyze, you have to understand how you have worked the ground and look at your numbers. Let us hear your opinion. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bravo, bravo.